Hello, it's me again, and I want to discuss this Roe versus Wade being overturned. I really don't want to discuss that. I want to discuss other people's opinion on it and what some brown women what I've heard a couple of brown women say. Okay, I don't have an opinion. I say this. I don't have any personal feelings about Roe versus Wade because it doesn't affect my life personally, okay? I've never been pregnant. I can't have an abortion if I never had been pregnant, then I could never have had an abortion, okay? And I'm not even having sex right now, and I just don't think I want to. I just kind of lost that desire, okay? Because of the path I'm on to transcending the ego world, which is I didn't realize how attached you can be to a physical world, a human life. That's almost like, well, I don't want to go into that. I'm about to go off the subject. I want to get to what I'm going to say. But because of those reasons and because love don't seem to work in the ego world, not for me, the love can exist because a lot of people who are more in their ego than they're in their heart, you really don't know what can happen with them at any time. People have been married for 20 years and then all of a sudden crazy stuff happens. So I don't even want to mess with love in the kind of world that's ruled by the ego, okay? And that's what the particular reality that most of us in this particular simulation, a lot of people are more in their ego than in their heart, unless you go somewhere like, it's just a small number of people that actually are more in their heart than in their ego, okay? A very small number around the world, okay? But anyway, with that being said, I want to say this. And I wanted to get the whole personal feelings thing out the way because I don't want to really have it's okay to have an opinion on Roe versus Wade, but I don't care either way. I don't really care. Okay. But I want to say this, what does kind of irk me a little bit. This does irk me a little bit. And it irks me because there's still a part of me that get tired of folks telling black women, so-called black women or brown women, what to do. There's a part of me that just gets sick of it, and it's a part of me, even though I have work to do on myself. That's why I'm not big on calling myself a teacher or some other stuff like that, or telling other folks what they need to do, because I have too much work to do on myself to be worried about what somebody else does with their life. Or somebody else, yeah. But what kind of irked me is that it's okay if a person is happy, that's their feelings about it. If people are happy about it being overturned, or people not so happy, that's their personal feelings. I don't care about the personal feelings. What I do have a problem with is when you tell somebody else what they need to do. Brown women got a problem with that. Brown women got a problem with control, but a lot of people got that problem. So, but here's what I want to say. So, I was listening to a lady, right? And somebody got in her chat and said that this, white people, white women, so there were some white women, most likely Republicans, that said this is a plus for white people. And I can see that it probably is a plus because they realize that it's not mostly black women getting abortions, it's mostly white women getting abortions. It's not mostly Latina women getting abortions, it's mostly white women getting abortions. For some reason, the black community seems to think that the only black women do everything. They think that only black women get government assistance. They think that only black women are getting abortions. And so, but these white women know full well that it's not mostly black women getting abortions. So when the black community want to have the comment on these things and get happy because they think it's going to stop black women, you don't understand, and they want to celebrate and go like, aha, aha, aha. You don't understand who is hurting the most. The people that's affected the most are white women. Black women are only affected because most of them are killed. Many of them die in the hospitals. There's an article about how lots of black women die in the process of childbirth or after childbirth. A lot of black women die while pregnant. There's a high sudden infant syndrome death among little black kids. I think this was the story somewhere in Tennessee. It's old. I mean, this was like something probably from the 80s and 90s, that thing. So the problem with black women just having a bunch of babies is that for some reason she's unhealthy, and I think it's due to a huge lack of support and a huge lack of resources more than her eating unhealthy, because it's a lot of women that don't eat the healthiest. I think the biggest problem is that she has a huge lack of resources and support. So getting on that, when it was white people, probably white women, that said this is a plus for white people. Yeah, because they fear that their race is dying out. So they have a right to feel like it's a plus. If they feel like their race is dying out and they feel like they have a superior race and their race is dying out, they have a right to be happy that they're going to stop these white women from getting these abortions, because that's the main ones that's getting them. Okay? Black women, a lot of them die for some reason, and a lot of them get killed while they're pregnant. It's a high matricide rate. And when I hear so-called black women that want to get happy because they feel like more black women should have babies, but they're not taking into account these things of black women having limited resources, not having the support she needs, not having the father figure for the child, then when they not taking that into account, then that's why I have the problem, because you are still living in a fairy tale. You're not seeing what's really happening. You live in a fairy tale where you think black women are just going to have these babies all of a sudden without getting abortions, which I think is mostly white women getting abortions anyway. But let's just say you want mostly black women to get pregnant. But the thing is that there's a high matricide rate, and a lot of them die while giving birth, and a lot of them have problems. So this is not looking good for black. That's not for black people. That's probably more for white folks than it is for black folks. Because black women don't have support, and most likely she might lose that child anyway because of the black community that just have a serious lack of resources, and whatever she get, she gonna have to run to something that was put together by somebody of another ethnicity, whether it's Latino or Hispanic, or whether it's Caucasian. Because as of right now, I don't think the black community have a lot of things in place for black mothers. I think it was a time that the black community did have things in place for single mothers who were struggling. But white people have more of a reason to celebrate, because they're men under this system. Their men, for the most part, are true patriarchs. They're true patriarchs, but you have some women that just want black women to just keep getting pregnant, but there's no patriarchy. So more than likely, if you're going to have a bunch of black women that's going to get pregnant by a father that wants to really be a father, more than likely it's going to be a guy of a different ethnicity or a different culture altogether. Maybe he won't be black American, maybe he might be African, but there's stories about that too. But I haven't heard of too many Africans, I guess, that really abandon their children. I don't know. When I talk to African women, they feel like a father needs to be a father. They can't imagine what they see going on in Black America with a lot of these guys abandoning their children. They just can't fathom it. They don't understand it. And the two African women that I have listened to on media, on YouTube, both got pregnant by Black American men, and both of those Black American men are not in their children's lives. See, but when they're dealing with somebody, a man other than Black American, even if they're not married, that male is around. So they, it's something that's going on, and you can't change him. And I don't care if it's not all, because the few that are good men, every black woman can't get pregnant by him. See? Every black woman can't get pregnant by him, because these very women that want black women to keep getting pregnant and having babies, and they happy about this overturn of Roe versus Wade, they also don't feel like black women, or so-called brown women, they don't feel like they should date outside their race. So now you taking their options away. You want them to keep having babies, but in the Black American community, that's not a good option. They have very little to choose from, and then you don't want them to date outside their race. I always promoted black women being healthy, mentally and spiritually anyway, before they go rush and have babies and go date somebody anyway. I think that there's a huge, when you have a group of women that's at the bottom, that means there's a huge spiritual problem that's with them. That's a spiritual problem. I will say it and say it again. When you have a group of women that is at the bottom, that is a huge spiritual problem. So I don't feel like any group of women who's at the bottom with everybody standing on their heads need to be running off getting pregnant, unless they're getting pregnant by billionaires and whatever help they need. That billionaire husband can go get them pay for them some therapy. Black women everybody need a lot of healing. Okay, let me just get that straight. Everybody needs some healing. But any group of women that's on the bottom of society, that means that is a huge spiritual issue behind that. A huge one. Okay, a huge one. And you see a lot of these, I don't want to about to get off subject again. I was going to say how they attack each other before they attack who they think the enemy is. They attack each other the most. See, that's a huge spiritual problem too, because they're quick to kill off each other like black men are quick to kill off each other. Black women are quick to kill off each other, but a lot of them use a lot of black magic. Black men use guns and black women like to use black magic, okay? And they're quick to want to kill off other women. And it's almost like if they could use that black magic where it probably belonged, they could have probably ended all this craziness that's going on with the world, but they'd rather hurt each other. And so I just don't see, I think like that. But here's the thing, like I was saying earlier about the white folks getting happy that it was overturned, because they feel that their race is dying out, and they also know that their kids, when more kids are being born, there's not going to be a problem with taking care of the children that's born, because there are no lack of resources in the white community. There's no lack of resources. There's a huge lack of resources in the black community. Number one, the black community does not exist. There is no community. Okay, there is no community. Okay, so the black people don't have a reason to really be happy. I personally think most brown women should stop birthing kids for this so-called black community that doesn't really exist, because there's no community. Just about every store that's in a neighborhood is owned by somebody else of another ethnicity. So there's no resources in the brown community to keep saying that brown women need to keep getting pregnant. Okay, so that's the problem I have, that she said, yeah, it's a plus for white women, that she responded to that commenter in the chat. She said, yeah, it's a plus for white people, but it's also a plus for black people too. It's not a plus for so-called black people in the United States of America, because there is hardly any support for single mothers in the black community. Most of the time, when these single mothers need some support, when they need resources, they're getting it from white people. So at this point, I'm gonna tell you something. I don't feel like brown women have a right to tell other brown women. Let me say this, and I don't mean to, I'm gonna explain what I mean so it doesn't sound like I'm being ugly when I say it. The white woman and the white man have more of a right to tell the black women to have babies more than a black woman and a black man. I'm gonna say that again, and I'm gonna explain what I mean so it doesn't sound like I'm being harsh. White women and white men have more of a right to tell so-called black women or brown women to have babies more than the brown or black woman or the brown or black male. Here's why. Because of what I just said earlier. She going to a hospital most likely either owned by Asians or white folks. When she needs some resources, when she get government assistance, what they say, white zaddy. So most of these kids are raised by the government. They raised by, and we don't know who the government is, honestly. Okay, we know there's people that work for the government. Anybody can do that, working at the VA or stuff at the post office or something, right? But we don't really know who the government is and what they look like, okay? So I don't want to just think they all white, but that seems like what I've seen in the spiritual realm, that most of them do seem to look white. So either way, you got the white man raising black kids because it's a lot of single mothers with a lot of fathers that don't want to take care of their kids. But yet and still you get some black women that's happy about this and feel like black women should have more kids. That lady said, and I'm not going to hop on her opinion. I don't care about her opinion. It's okay to be happy, just like white folks are happy, right? Because they feel like the race is dying out. But here is where in this particular case, in this system, because it seems like brown people are doing too well under this system, right? And I get it, it's not their original system. That's why they're probably not doing well. But, and I'm talking about brown people around the world. Okay, but just in the United States of America alone, right? Here is where if you feel like black women should keep having babies under this particular system that they already not doing well in, black women need to think more like the white woman. I'm sorry, but the white woman has a right to be happy because they know that they have men that take care of their children. They know that they have men who are builders. They have every right to be happy because the more kids, the kids are more than likely the kids are going to be taken care of. Okay, but in the black community, not so. So when that lady said good, it's good for the black community too. That she feel like the black community, it needs to be more black kids in the black community. And I'm like, it's not a good thing for the black community. That's what I'm thinking. It's not a good thing for the black community because they don't know what to do with the kids they have right now. They can't hardly stop their kids from being killed in drive-bys. They can't, the stores are closing down. These little stores are closing down in black neighborhoods. This is why this is why I don't listen to a lot of brown women on YouTube. I have a hard time listening to them because they seem to be intellectual in almost every area except for when it comes to the black community. It seems like they go kind of mentally challenged. It's almost like they go mentally challenged. You see that the black community can't handle the kids they have right now. Okay, you see that a lot of black women, because I'm sorry, it's been all over the news. Any white woman, any Asian, any Latino woman can tell you that a lot of black women die at higher rates than other groups of women during childbirth or during pregnancy. Any other group of women can tell you that. So for the fact that a lot of black women might not know it, that's why I don't like to hear them speak, because I feel like they get mentally challenged when it comes to the black community because they get into their emotions, they get into their feelings, and they don't use logic. That's why I can't listen to them, because they don't use logic. They use logic when it comes to mathematics. They use logic when it comes to everything else, when it comes to other things. But for some reason, when it comes to this black community, it seems like they don't make a lick of sense. And I have a hard time listening to them because they sound like sacrifices. And the reason why it bothers me so much, because I've told you, I was like a sacrifice of my family. And when you're a sacrifice of your family, that's an energy that kind of stays with you. And that is something. So I hate to hear a woman that sounds sacrificial. I hate to see a lot of black women sound sacrificial. That's sacrificial talk to say that there needs to be more black kids born too, when you can't do nothing with the black kids that's here now. You sound like a sacrifice. You sound like a sacrifice, and I know what it feels like to be a sacrifice. That's why I can't hardly listen to black women, because it make me want to throw up in my mouth. I wanted to throw up in my mouth. Okay? I hate it when they do that. They ain't like the white woman, and I hate to compare you, but white women are more logical. And when it comes to this situation, I'm saying, right? When it comes to this situation, they seem to understand that kids need both parents. You are under a particular system, because what black women like to do is they like to talk about something that happened 500, 600 years ago, or during the time the Amazon women, or during the time other groups of women. Or they talk about African women back in the early 1300s and how they used to do it. And they like to apply that to the so-called black American woman today and what she should be able to do based on what the Amazon women did, based on what women in Zimbabwe do, based on what South African women do. something is wrong with the thinking process. Women, these so-called black women, love to go in the past and talk about what women were able to do in the past under a completely different system. Under a completely different system. You say, oh, well, those women back in those days was able to, back in those days, they were not under this system. They were under a matriarchal system where it was more of communal living and everybody was treating each other like family. It wasn't just separated families by blood like you see today. How you can see people on the streets and nobody give a darn and look at them like they're not even human, but you take care of your individual family. That is not how matriarchy was back in the day either. Matriarchy, they came together and took care of each other. So yeah, it could be, if that's what black women are doing, if black women would come together and do something like that and say, okay, we need to come together and have resources for a lot of single mothers instead of them having to keep running to white folks. If these black women who were so happy and feel like black women should have more babies, if these women would come with a solution and say, well, there's a program in place for black women who are single mothers, okay, because you want them to keep having babies, but then you don't want them to have date outside their race. So basically, you want them to keep getting pregnant by black American men. Or you want to tell them to go get themselves an African man. What if they don't want an African man? Are they got to go and find one? So because you don't like them dating outside their race? Because more than likely, if they want a real provider, most black women in the United States of America are going to have to get somebody outside of their race. That's just what it is, and everybody in the world can see that. Everybody in the world can see that. So I'm not going to bite my tongue on that and act like it's going to hurt somebody's feeling. Everybody on the planet can see that, and that's a shame when everybody on the planet can see that black American children, a lot of them are fatherless. I mean, just about everybody on the planet can see that. So ain't no need of not hurting nobody's feelings and talking about something, not all, when it has reached the world. Okay, the black Americans and they dysfunction and dysfunctional families have reached the world. Everybody knows. Okay, everybody knows. So you don't need to not hurt nobody's feelings. Black woman, you want to encourage black women to keep getting pregnant, but obviously she ain't gonna go run and look for no African because you want the man to be dark skinned and you want him to be so-called black. So now you don't want her dating outside her race. So that means that she's limited to men that's most likely not going to take care of their children. And then you got to take into account the matricide race if he don't kill her butt, because she might put him on child support, so he might kill her before that child get a chance to be born. That means he's going to kill a child too. Okay. So, you don't have nothing in place for stuff like that. You don't have a safety net in place for those situations. You just want to talk and tell black women what they need to do, but you don't understand that the black community is not the white community. The black community is not the Latino community. It's not even that. Because even like the area I'm staying now is mostly surrounded by Latinos, okay? And what I will say is that going around the Latino communities, it's a lot of staffing agencies. I mean, it's a whole, everywhere you turn, it's a lot of staffing agencies to put their people in to work. But guess what? They put other people to work too, because it's other black folks. It's black folks that get jobs through those staffing agencies that's run by Latinos, right? Everywhere you look, there's a staffing agency because there's a lot of Mexicans or whatever that don't speak English. They don't speak English, and it's hard for them to work. It's hard for them to get jobs, regular jobs. So everywhere you turn, there's a staffing agency in place. There is a lot of communities built by Latino men, and it's looking good in certain areas. I mean, it's nice housing. Okay, look like some of the houses you might see in Beverly Hills, almost like that. Okay, but it's more upper middle class type of communities. It wouldn't look like Beverly Hills because Beverly Hills is a different class. But what I'm saying is it still looks like upper middle class. It still looks like, I mean, they building up their neighborhoods. There's Mexican restaurants everywhere you turn, but it used to be a lot of soul food restaurants like that too. I don't criticize soul food restaurants. They got their Mexican restaurants. So what's wrong with soul food? The black people like to criticize soul food. Why aren't they criticizing Italian food? It's just as fattening. Why don't you criticize Mexican food? It's just as fattening. That's another thing. Black people like to criticize each other. They like to criticize each other for black women doing hair and black women doing nails, but now you got these Koreans doing all these nails, and you ain't got no criticism for them. Now you turn around and say black women need to have their own business. Well, when they were doing nails, you were criticizing them and calling them ghetto. Now the Koreans got their hands on it. What you got to say? You see? So that's another problem. It's black people, black women, black men, black people, period, always have a criticism for the things that black folks would try to do. And now that we don't see those things anymore, you got a lot of Chinese folks and Korean folks cooking soul food. When I go inside of what's that, waffles, chicken and waffles, Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. When I would go into Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles in Inglewood, I think it was that's LA. It's not, I don't think that's any longer Inglewood. I don't know. California, that's wrong. The Mexicans are cooking that food. It's Mexicans cooking that food. Okay? You don't see them. You don't see Mexicans criticizing each other for cooking soul food. You don't see Chinese people criticizing each other for cooking soul food. But you hear black folks go, soul food unhealthy. But now they making money off of what black people were good at. Okay? So basically what I'm saying is a lot of things that used to be in the black community are leaving the black community, and other groups of people are taking it over. And then you get these stores. I was listening to a woman today talk about how it was a store closing down in Inglewood. I used to live in Inglewood like 5-6 years ago. About 7 years ago, I lived in Inglewood, California. Yeah. And I lived there for 5 years. So it was 2 to 3 years ago since I lived there. Yeah, about 2 to 3 years ago. But anyway, she showed a news clip about how a store was closing down in Inglewood, California. And I know the street that it's on, the street they talking about, since I used to live there. And, it's a high crime area. Not the particular street that I stayed on, but overall the surrounding areas could be high crime. Just not the street I was on. I guess I was lucky. The street I was on was more middle class. But there are areas of Inglewood that's very impoverished. Okay? It's impoverished. Okay? Yeah. So it was a store closing down. So you got these stores that's ran by white people, non-black people, and they closing down these stores in these black neighborhoods. And then you got a lot of these black women and these elderly black women, because you got mostly the elderly black women and mostly elderly, middle-aged elderly black women who probably don't have transportation, just wondering what they gonna do. And then you see this, and you never see the men in those communities with any solutions. But yet and still, these women feel like black women should keep having babies, and they happy about Roe versus Wade because they want black women to keep having babies. Why? Because basically black women at this point are only having babies to be consumed. They're just going to most likely get killed. I mean, I hate to say that, but you see, what do you see what's going on with the children right now? You can't compare them to white children. White people have resources. Black people used to have resources. I don't care what kind of racism is going on, because it was a time during the 60s and 70s and all that stuff, black women would have had programs in place for single mothers like this. It seems like now it's just like all the businesses is run by folks of a different culture. And if they decide to close down their businesses in the black neighborhood, the black folks are just messed up. They just ain't, they can't do nothing. They ain't got no food. They don't see. Okay? So that's, I know this was long, but that's what gets to me. That does kind of get to me. Because it's nothing wrong. I have no problem with getting happy about black women having more babies. I have no problem with getting happy about that. What I do have a problem is that black women, these very type of black women, they seem to live in a fairy tale. They seem to not know the reality of this particular black community. They seem to not see the reality of it. And they seem to live in this fairy tale of, well, black women can do this, and black women can do this, and black women can do this. No, what you need to do is, if you want to tell black women what to do, then you need to come up with a solution where you have programs in place. So if you feel like black women should keep having babies, but then you disagree with her dating interracially, which I don't feel like the black women need to be getting pregnant like that. I don't think they should be getting pregnant in the droves. White women get married more to their group of men. Okay, so I don't feel like it's a smart move for black women to go get pregnant in the droves like that, knowing goodness well they're probably going to be unmarried, and there's going to be most likely going to be a father figure in the house. So that is just a bad idea altogether. And plus, a group of people that's at the bottom, a group of women that's at the bottom, and then the patriarchs, the people that's supposed to be patriarchs, are not really doing anything for the community. The last thing they need to be thinking about is really even having sex with anybody, unless they're having sex with somebody who can give them resources. The last thing I think it should be on their mind is having sex with anybody. They shouldn't even be horny. Not being on the bottom, because that's spiritual. When you're on the bottom, that makes you a sacrifice. And when you're a sacrifice, and you're part of a group that's a sacrifice, then something could happen to you without you even living in the black community. That's why I call that spiritual. Okay? So that very reason, I don't think black women should be horny, especially for a man that can't provide nothing. They shouldn't even want that. I don't care what his penis look like. You shouldn't even want to be sexually attracted. That's what I'm saying. Because if you're messing with somebody that got some resources, at least you don't have to work. So if you do need some help, if you do need some therapy or spiritual help, or however you decide to get it, at least you're dealing with somebody that's going to be able to pay for it. You don't have to work like 2 and 3 jobs, right? But these women suggest that brown women get pregnant because they are thinking about how women used to do during matriarchy. More than likely, they live in fairy tales. They're not seeing what's happening right now. What makes you think that brown women having more babies, what makes you think that the black community is going to look better? It's going to look worse, because there's already babies that black folks can't hardly take care of. Okay, so if they can't take care of the babies they got right now, why do you want them to have more? That is sacrificial language. That's sacrificial language. Okay, but that's all I got to say, and I will talk later.